With us now, NBC News White House correspondent Erin Gilchrist in West Palm Beach, Florida, near Mar-a-Lago, criminal defense attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Danny Cevallos, and Jeremy Peters, New York Times reporter and MSNBC contributor. So, Erin, what more do we know about what's going on at Social Security?
Well, Jose, as you mentioned, Michelle King was the top official at the Social Security Administration, and she retired after refusing to give Musk's team access to these sensitive government records you referenced. That's according to two sources, things like bank information, Social Security numbers, birth dates, in some cases medical records. And as you noted, the White House did confirm that King was no longer head of that agency. The president has nominated a new administrator for it. The White House press secretary said that the president has directed DOJ to identify fraud at the Social Security Administration. And as you noted, she said that team hasn't dug through the books there just yet, but it does suspect that there is widespread fraud happening there. And our team looked at an Inspector General report, an audit last year that showed that over a 7-year period, the Social Security Administration made almost $72 billion in improper payments, as they termed it, a little less than 1% of the payments in that time period, 7 years. The report also says that most of those improper payments were overpayments, not payments to dead people, as the press secretary seemed to suggest there, or to people who didn't really qualify for any payments at all, Jose.
I mean, Jeremy, what kind of information? And I want to ask you also about, this thing that $72 billion over a 10-year period were found, and that's without a detailed analysis, right? That's not with going through minuscule checks. That would be a little over $10 billion a year. But what kind of information, et cetera, could a DOJ into Social Security be looking into?
Well, I think fraud is a big issue here. It's not made up. The extent to which it exists, though, seems to be significantly exaggerated. As long as there has been government aid, of course, Jose, there's been government fraud. People have long sought to take advantage of these government programs, making up whole identities, going after the benefits of dead people even. That does happen, but it's known as, what people in government refer to as an accounting trick. People, when politicians put forward their budgets every year, in every state legislature across the country, they cite savings from the finding of waste, fraud, and abuse. However, they rarely find as much as they say they're going to find, if any at all. So this is hardly, case closed here, I would say.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't recall, and maybe it's just me, I don't recall this type of minuscule search through data, through records, through et cetera, to look into whether there is any kind of, misuse of funds. And the fact that it's, at least according to the Trump administration, going to be going across the board in the federal government, first of all, that's not something that's been done before. I mean, certainly Clinton did some of this. But there's the issue of what's Congress's responsibility.
Right.
And they're the ones that, give the money.
Exactly. And Congress has completely abdicated its responsibility here. I mean, this is what has allowed Trump to take on this really expansive view of executive power. And Republicans, who control all three branches of government, essentially, are not doing anything to stop him. The House and the Senate certainly have not shown any type of backbone or will to stand up for Trump and reassert their authority over budgetary matters, which is what they are supposed to do under this three-branch framework that we have.
Yeah, I mean, and Danny's Social Security records can include all kinds of different things. Is there any kind of potential legal issues here?
Yes. I mean, to name a few, you have the Federal Privacy Act, you have the Internal Revenue Code. Those all have strict rules about disclosure. But it's really interesting. A decision came out yesterday involving the Department of Education and a challenge to access of that information. And this is a decision that I think folks should look at, because it's one district court judge concluding that there's a difference when it comes to determining irreparable harm. There's a difference between disclosing information to the public and internal agency disclosure within the agency of that information. Even if there is a risk that that information could be disclosed publicly, those statutes I just mentioned have remedies for that. And these plaintiffs, at least in the Department of Education case involving this kind of access, the court found that disclosure internally may not be the kind of irreparable harm that would warrant a restraining order. Now, it's not the final word. There's going to be so much litigation on this, but that's one interesting take by one court.
So, Danny, in civilian talk, what's the difference between internal and external?
Well, the idea is bringing these Doge folks in. They're getting deployed technically as members of the agency for several months. So if they access that information, the response by the administration is going to be, well, that's internal. It's not like it's getting put out in the public. It's not publicly available. It's not on a website. It's not something people are supposed to access. The same rules of privacy apply to someone who comes in from Doge as to somebody who is already in there, although there are all kinds of complex rules, for example, in the IRS about even who can access that sensitive information in the agency. Not everybody gets access. So this is going to be the subject of a lot of legal challenges, and the district court decisions are hardly the final stop. Many of them may go up all the way to the end, the Supreme Court.
And Aaron, we're also getting word this morning that the Food and Drug Administration's food head is also leaving.
Yeah, there are some reports, Jose, that the head of the food division at the FDA stepped down yesterday because of cuts across that particular agency. When our team asked the White House about those reports, the press secretary did provide a statement to us, and I'll read part of it for you here. It says that there are a number of bureaucrats who are resistant to the democratic process and mandate delivered by the American people. President Trump is only interested in the best and most qualified people who are also willing to implement his America First agenda on behalf of the American people. It's not for everyone, and that's okay. That is the extent of the statement, Jose, we got from Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary.
And Jeremy, there's a clear intent to kind of downplay from the White House Elon Musk's role in all of this. What's that all about?
It's about Trump trying to reassert his authority as the president, which Elon Musk seems sometimes to forget that Trump actually is. I mean, look, this picture right here. This is not a good look. The White House and President Trump especially do not want an image like that. Elon Musk standing up, looming over a sitting, quiet president of the United States. I mean, it kind of blows my mind, and I know it ruffled a lot of feathers internally in Trump world that Elon in this. I mean, this picture speaks 1,000 words.
Even though that was kind of, I mean, it was set up.
Staged.
Yeah, it was staged. It wasn't a surprise.
Well, it was. It shouldn't have been a surprise, and I think that we are all waiting to see when the bottom drops out here. I mean, this is not a sustainable relationship. Ever since the two of them started working together, these two huge personalities and egos inevitably will clash, and it will be at some point, I'm sure, the final straw for Trump. As you know, someone inside Trump world told me not that long ago, this relationship will end in tears.
Danny, meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal is out with a big piece on how President Trump has used emergency powers to advance policy objectives, writing, quote, I'm going to read this, his declaration of an energy emergency comes as U.S. oil production is at or near record highs. Trump's border actions come as illegal crossings have dropped substantially, even though one could argue that maybe those drops are because of in no small part, the different actions taken by the Trump administration on day one. Is there a specific definition or test that needs to be met in order to declare an emergency?
Short answer is not really. The National Emergencies Act sought to reel in some of the presidential power to issue or declare these national emergencies, but it really hasn't done much to give us a definition. There's guidance in different statutes because what it does is it requires the president to issue a declaration and cite the federal statute under which he has that kind of emergency power. So, for example, IEPA is a statute that deals with international money. So there has to be some reason related to international money or financing. That's just one example. So there isn't a hard definition, but since we're already living under dozens of national emergencies without knowing it, that shows that the National Emergencies Act, because back then there were 4 when it was passed, has not done that much to either define national emergencies or reel them in, which was its original intent.
Aaron Gilchrist, Danny Cevallos, and Jeremy Peters, thank you all so much.